Welcome to my channel, guys. And in the last video of this series, we looked at how we can create request classes to actually make a curl call to the APIs that we are trying to connect. Now, after this, there are a lot of things where the plugin will help us make multiple changes to the way we are handling the curl call. But to do that, I will need some way to show you the output, and hence I am going to create a second Laravel application. So I'll open up a new terminal. Let me go to my desktop, and I had a composer create project, so I'll just use a new one called test. So this is going to be a Laravel application where we are going to make our API calls, and we are going to see whether that the code that we wrote is kind of making sense or not. So the one file which I will need over here is the api.php file, and obviously the log file which is not created yet. So what I will do is, first of all, serve this on port 9000. Okay, and right, I'll just add a log so that the file is created, and then we will see how things go. Where is my web.php? Web.php. I don't need the terminal and now. Logger 1 done, and instead of 8000 I'll do 9000, and with this I should have the log file. Correct. So this is all that we need just to confirm whether our working is as expected. Now, because we are going to create a new integration, the first thing that I would like to ideally do is go into our previous app and create a new connector. We will call this Laravel API, and this is Laravel connector, maybe something like that. I mean, you are free to choose any kind of name, but we have a Laravel API integration and we have this connector. The base URL over here will be http in localhost 9000 and API. Okay, and we don't need any default headers, although we can check it later. I'll create a new request. So request get user list, something like that, and then we have this. It is going to be a get method. I'll do users. All right, and inside my web.php, let's change a little bit of code over here. Oops. So let me see if I can do a one-liner. Just interested to see. So I'll do new Laravel connector, and then do send new get user list. Okay, now with this, ideally, and I'll also need to dd, so I'll do that. And what do I get? I get ideally a 404, right? Because I haven't created that API, but let me quickly do that. Route get users function. I'll do return maybe name, India. That's about it. And because this is an array, I could have done a response, but let's keep it simple and look at the browser. So this time I'm getting a status code of 200, which means the request was successful, and obviously I can do a JSON on that as well. So I got the data which I was expecting. And yes, this is really interesting because this is just one line of code. One line of code to make a call to a third-party application. Now tell me, can this get simpler than this? I'm sure it is not. So yeah, let's move ahead. So we have seen the request class obviously, but we also get a header. And what happens is I can set headers at the connector level and also at the request level. So let's just say at the connector level, I want to send a default header. Oops. Okay, there is already a method called default header. Right. I'll try to send something interesting over here. Let's just say API secret. And this is something which we can pull in from our env, but right now I'll do 98765432 as a string. So just imagine that we are calling this or getting this value from our env. So if that is the case, in here I'm returning this, but I can also do a logger request, okay, header, and what is our key? API secret. Let's just see if we are able to pull that out. I'll go over here, refresh, come into my test application, and can you see I get the API key, which basically means if I have some kind of a middleware in my second application, then I can create some kind of a logic which allows me to test. For example, a basic, again, this is never going to be the case with your application, but just to show you, I can do something like, if this is not equal to this, return response JSON, you are not allowed, and this can be a 401. Okay, let's see what we get inside our application. Okay, this is working, and now if I change it, hit refresh, cannot assign string to property, which basically means it has failed. And if I now do data instead of JSON, I should see something. Okay, it doesn't. Oh, my bad. It's body. So can you see it says you are not allowed? This basically means that we are not able to make a successful request. And if I do the entire thing, can you see it says 401 unauthorized. Now this is my response header, so obviously I won't see that particular thing over here. But yes, as I said, so it means that inside my connector, if I have the correct API key, I should be able to validate this every time. And you can literally have a middleware in the, which will typically be the case, where your middleware is checking whether the application or the request is an authenticated request or not. So now it will obviously pass. I need to do a .json over here, refresh, and I'm again getting the data, which is fine. Now this was default headers inside the connector. But let's just say I want to send something even inside the request. That is also possible, and I'll show you. So this is my request. Resolve endpoint is there, and if I now add a default header, let's just say you have one API where you want to send a different key. Okay, I'll just copy this. Okay, and I'll have one and then 0. So I'll just sorry, right? So this is my request, just to give you the context if you're lost. So get user listing, because we already have a connector which says API secret is 987654321, and this one, okay, I'll make it a very different ABCDEFG. Okay, this is inside the request. Now if I get rid of this logic, although I didn't need to, clear my log and hit refresh, let's see, we are getting ABCDEFG, which basically means that inside the request it got overridden, and now this is the value. So similarly, if I want to send something else, for example, role of the user, right? Then what is going to happen? Let me hit refresh, come over here to my test application. I can see the API secret, but I don't see the role. Obviously, because I am only logging the API secret. If I log the role for that specific API, hit refresh, go to my test applications log file, I can see next time again the API key was logged and then the role came in as well. So yes, headers can be set at the connector and on the request level as well. Now obviously this is where I can set properties. For example, I can send the current user ID and then I can pass it over here, and this is going to work, because if you want, I can just, for the sake of understanding, do that. It's at the request level, so I'll come over here, constructor, right? So I'll add this constructor, which is username. I don't need this, I think that's old example, and what I can do over here is private string, something like that. Okay, cannot declare promoted properties. What does that even mean? Okay, underscore construct. Okay, interesting. Why is the example over here as constructor? Okay, I mean, this works. So now obviously, because it's a required parameter, my web.php is complaining. But if I do something like this, and as the example suggested, right, if I add this in my default headers inside the request, what is going to happen? Well, first of all, the request should not fail, which is the correct thing. And if I go to my test application, I'll clear the log. I'll clear one particular log, or rather I'll change this. I'll log the X username and see if that is coming up. So this is my log file. I hit refresh and I can see the username being passed, right? So these basic things does work. And obviously, if you have some logic inside your application, you can kind of add that. So let's just say, this is my test application. Let's go over here inside the web, and let's assume that you have a controller or something like that, right? And you felt that in some way you need to send an additional header, right? So I can, this request has headers, and I can add a header to it. I'm assuming it takes an array. Okay, no, first parameter, last parameter, or rather second parameter, right? Okay, I need to do this. No. Why is this complaining? Okay, I'll create a request equals this. And obviously now I can do this. Okay. Think it is not able to recognize, I don't know, my header, and value will be 1 2 3. Is it going to break? It is. The send argument must be of type Saloon request. Okay, there's some problem over here. Can I then do something like this and send the request completely over here? I think when I'm doing a header, right, it is not returning the get user listing this request class, and that's the problem. Okay, now it should not fail, which is fine, but I won't be able to see the log, obviously, because I haven't logged that header. But the question is, I added this custom header, so will it come? Let's see. Instead of x username, if I log this, hit refresh, I do get that 1 2 3. So this is working as well, right? So based on your logic, you can add certain things, and there are all these methods available for you to work with. And yes, there is an example, which is, if you have some complex headers, you can do something like this, and then the second argument is an array. So that's all about headers through this package. It is very important to get a very clear picture of headers, because in your API calls, you will need to make certain, you will need to send certain data points through headers, and I feel this is a very easy API that they have given us to use the functions underneath in that package to make those things happen. So yeah, share your thoughts about this in the comments below. If you like this video, then do click on the thumbs up icon, and do subscribe to my channel to support me.